Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and salutations, ladies and gentle germs. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Neo, and thank you so much for clicking on the video. So here we are. The promised day has come and gone. We are officially 24 hours removed from the launch of one of the most ambitious games to ever grace the Nintendo Switch. It was a game that was dubbed the impossible port by so many people, and the sheer thought of it ever being ported to the platform had so many gamers rolling their eyes with nothing but disgust. It is one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time, one of my favorite games of the generation, and I go so far as to say it set the new standard for what it means to be an open world RPG. And I am of course referring to the game that needs no introduction, but damn it, I'll give it one. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now out for Nintendo Switch. And I know it's going to sound cliche, but the fucking Witcher 3 is on the Switch, man. Like, can we just recognize that for a second? The Witcher 3 Complete Edition out on the Nintendo Switch. All in one cartridge. Shit's crazy, man. I mean, that being said. So even though this is an installment of Make the Switch, or for those of you guys out there who have never seen the series, or if you're tuning in for the very first time, what's up? How you doing? This is a series where I go through and I highlight a lot of third-party games coming out on the Switch, but more specifically, games that were never released on a Nintendo platform that the mainstream media is really not going to be paying a lot of attention to. However, as I was getting ready to capture footage for this video, I realized that The Witcher 3 kind of invalidates that entire series in a nutshell, considering it's one of the most widely anticipated games coming out on the Switch, so much to the point where you would think it's a brand new release with how much people are talking about it. So as I'm sure you can surmise, with how much people are talking about it, everybody is uploading comparison videos, talking about how this compares to PlayStation and Xbox and PC. They're doing the screenshot comparisons, this, that, and the third, and they're talking about the differences. And it got so much to the point where there were so many people out there who do a much better job of explaining the differences than I ever could, that if you wanted to get the real in-depth nitty-gritty analysis of it, you can watch those guys. What I attempt to do with this video is just tell you guys my experience playing the game on the Switch, and whether or not you, the average Joe Schmo, might find enjoyment in it, whether you're picking it up for the first time or you're double or let's say triple dipping. Now let's just get this out of the way, because it's the biggest elephant to ever fit in the room, and he still doesn't pay rent here. Is The Witcher 3 for Nintendo Switch the best looking version of the game? No. Does it compare to The Witcher 3 on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One? No. Does it compare to The Witcher 3 with the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X enhanced patch? No. Does it compare to the No, it does not compare to any of those versions. I go so far as to say it is the worst running version of The Witcher 3. Now that we've gotten all the graphic horror fanboys out of the room, The Witcher 3 for Nintendo Switch is fucking awesome, y'all. And I already know right there I'm going to get complaints from people saying, oh, here we go, Neo overhyping portability, Neo is such a Switch fanboy. It's so funny that I constantly get these criticisms levels toward me because I went from hating the Switch to loving it as soon as I bought the system, but people forget the times in which I would actually go and be critical towards a lot of games on the Switch. Because, and this is the only time I'm ever going to bring this up when talking about this whole portability versus other systems, it never dawns on me that we keep having this discussion game in and game out. When a game comes to the Switch, everyone is saying that, oh, it's a shitty port, it's a shitty port, it's a shitty port because it doesn't run as good as the other systems. And I'm just sitting here scratching my head thinking to myself, do y'all know the difference between what is a shitty port and what is a game running on the Nintendo Switch? Because there are plenty of shitty ports that exist on the Nintendo Switch, as they do on PlayStation and Xbox. Every platform has their shitty ports. And there are also games that run really well for the Nintendo Switch. Games like the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm trilogy, a lot of the first-party Nintendo games. Likewise, there are a lot of games that run really bad on the Switch, such as Ark Survival Evolved. And I go so far as to say, even though I'm going to get crucified by the Nintendo community, Oh, well, it's a pretty controversial game in general. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I love the game to death. Oh, yes, I do. But this game runs like dog shit. And no, Torna doesn't run that much better. I know this. I've played it. That being said, The Witcher 3, this game, for it being on the Nintendo Switch, runs about as well as you would imagine, and then some. Now, that's not to make it sound like it's a doom and gloom equation, like, oh my gosh, see, so he's saying it runs great for the Switch. No, this game right here is the same game that you're getting on the PlayStation and the PC. It's the full Witcher experience, including all the expansions and all the DLC, everything about it. Nothing has been cut from the game. It's just compact on a smaller system. Are there cutbacks to it? Yes. Does it not look as pretty? Yes. But everything about the game, and I was so surprised, and I'm not going to get too in depth with the differences between the game as I go and throw everything on the floor. I'm not going to get too in depth with the comparisons, but I was very surprised to see a lot of the little things that you're accustomed to seeing in next generation titles, such as hair effects, weather effects, foliage and all that stuff, exist on a Nintendo Switch. And it runs well. It's very strange, maybe because this is a port made with love and understanding of the platform rather than just trying to brute force it and say it's on the Switch just because there are tons of ports like that. But I think what Saber Interactive and CD Projekt Red did with this port, which apparently took a year to develop, was they worked within the limitations of the system. It's limited GPU, it's limited CPU and all that. And they gave you that entire experience just scaled down with no compromises outside of the visuals and resolution. Which, if you are playing the game portably, are less noticeable than docked. I've played the game docked for about a grand total of 45 minutes, and yeah, we're not going to do that again. And that's not to say because the game runs terrible. It's just you notice a lot of the cutbacks when you're playing it on your TV. And I don't have a big TV. I have a 40-inch TV, But when you're playing on a screen of that size with a dynamic 720p resolution, yikes. That's all I can say. So when you're playing this game, I recommend you play it portably because you don't really notice all those things on the 6-inch screen. And just in general, I think that's the way the game was meant to be played. As strange as that sounds, considering this is coming from CD Projekt Red, a PC primary developer. It just looks really good on the handheld screen. There are some times where I'm playing this game where I'm just like, is this really running in real time? And it actually is. A lot of the models in the game look very nice. And apparently that's because they just ported those over from the PlayStation and Xbox, which makes a lot of sense because they run great. Really, really great. And if you guys want to get a good example of it to prove that I'm not BSing you, go check out my Twitter, twitter.com/NeoGameSpark. I upload a lot of screenshots from the game, and they hold up. They really do. Now, of course, the game itself is kind of a mixed bag when it comes to the performance, because there will be a lot of situations where I'm playing the game and it runs pretty good. The frame rate is a pretty steady 30 frames per second, and by that I mean it'll dip to the mid 20s at times. Never really goes below that, at least not from what I've experienced. Maybe an occasional hiccup here and there, but it stays in the high 20s more often than not 30. So I'm able to fight in combat just fine, no issues. But when things do get intense, the resolution does take a hit, which is kind of good because I'd much rather the resolution take a hit more so than all of the frame rate, because if the frame rate drops like the teens, but the resolution stays the same, to me, it's unplayable. But if the frame rate stays around the same, but the resolution ticks down a little bit, it's more understandable. And I'm sure that's going to be a couple of things that they work on as they optimize the game further, because one thing I've noticed with the Nintendo Switch and these third-party games is a lot of these developers are really about optimizing the game to the best to their abilities. Check out Doom. When Doom first released on the Nintendo Switch, compared to now, it's a completely different game. Like the way they've just optimized it to have it run better and fixing the resolution and all that stuff. Panic Buddy did a fantastic job with it. And they keep updating all the games like that, whether it's that, Wolfenstein, and some of the other games they put out and they port. I assume Saber is probably going to do the same thing for The Witcher 3. In fact, they already have. They came out with a day one patch for it. It's a 3 GB patch, which I know is going to be pretty controversial to some people because they assume that when they purchase the game, they're not going to have to download any more of the patches, which is true and not true. You have the entire game on a cartridge, but performance patches, I mean, it's the name of the game right now. I'm not trying to damage control or this, that, and the third, but, what do you guys want? Are we going to vilify CD Projekt Red and Saber Interactive for putting out a performance patch to fix a lot of things that people will complain about? Or are we going to get on them for not putting out a performance patch just to maintain the whole, hey, we're not going to put out any patches? You know what I'm saying? Like, even Nintendo puts out patches for their games like Breath of the Wild. Compare vanilla Breath of the Wild to Breath of the Wild now. Yeah. But one thing I was pleasantly surprised to see with the Switch version of The Witcher 3 is how much of the experience was kept intact while looking like a game that released this generation. Compare it to Wolfenstein 2 on the Nintendo Switch. It's a good port. It's a good port. I mean, obviously it has its setbacks and cutbacks, if you will, considering the nature of the game and how intense it gets. But just look at the character models in that game, where it's in first person and they get really up in your face. Yikes. It looks like someone just smeared a coat of Vaseline on the screen. And then compare that to Witcher 3. There's just no compromise, like, whatsoever. There's no comparison in this case. Saber Interactive did a much better job with this game on the Nintendo Switch. They did a much better job porting one of the most demanding games that, to be fair, doesn't run that much better on PlayStation 4 and Xbox by comparison. I mean, those versions still run at 30 frames per second, unless I think you have the X, which has 4K 60 frames per second for The Witcher 3, which is awesome. But if you compare what they put out with this game, compared to something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which was developed as a first-party Nintendo game, even though it's from Monolith, first-party Nintendo exclusive. 240p, yikes. But here, like, the resolution drops, but it never gets that bad. Never. And it gets intense on this game. So, yeah, playing the game has just been an absolute delight. And the majority of the time, like I said, I have been playing the game. It has been in handheld mode. I've just literally been sitting in bed. I've got my, HyperX headphones, and I'm just listening to it, and it just sounds amazing. The audio quality is, here's the funny thing. It's compressed, but not compressed to the point where it's completely noticeable. So let's just say if the audio was at 100%, the Switch version of the audio is about at 88%, which it's noticeable if you have an ear for these things, but it's not enough to where it's a deal breaker. It's not a Dark Souls remastered or Assassin's Creed 3 on the Switch. I don't know if they've patched either one of those, but it was very noticeable on those games, like extremely noticeable that it was a hindrance, like, ugh, disgusting. But here, it's good. It's really good. And who knows, maybe further down the road, they might release a high quality audio pack, if you will. So we'll have to see as far as that is concerned. But I've been sitting in bed playing this game, and I've been playing it actually using the Pro Controller. I would just literally, it just reminds me of the old days where I'd be playing games on like my Game Boy Advance. I had the Game Boy Advance SP, Midnight Blue. What's up, y'all? And I would just be sitting there playing the game, not a care in the world, just sitting in my covers with the pillows and all that stuff. And that's what I love about this time of year, because it's the fall season, and that's where I do a lot of my gaming. I don't really game too much in the summer. I play a lot of my games in the fall, and I'm just sitting here, and it brings back a lot of good memories. And I actually use the Pro Controller when I play the game. I would just mount it up on my bed sheets, and I would have the Pro Controller over here, so it's really comfortable, because the Joy-Cons and Witcher 3, it just doesn't mesh. It doesn't mesh. It really doesn't. And for these kind of like, even playing Zelda, I don't like playing it with the Joy-Cons. I like playing it with the Pro Controller, which is what I would do more often than not. So that's how I've been playing the game. I've just been in bed playing it in handheld mode with the Pro Controller. I know for a lot of people that sounds like it's so much work. Why don't you just play it on the TV? No, I don't want to play it on the TV. It's dynamic 720p. But that being said, man, it's The Witcher 3. And I know if you take away the portability aspect, that's the whole novelty, that's the whole selling point of it. You have the worst version of The Witcher 3, which is true. But that doesn't mean the worst version of The Witcher 3 is any less of a great experience than the other versions of The Witcher 3. Because it is. The Witcher 3 is a phenomenal game, and I would go so far as to say this is the best port we've seen on the Nintendo Switch, if only because of the fact that it proves that with a lot of time and effort and love, you can actually get a current generation game running on the Switch. Now, is this the be-all, end-all feasible alternative for all third-party games? No, it isn't, because I know a lot of developers aren't going to have the manpower and the clout to even want to port one of their games. This is a rare exception, and I assume that maybe Nintendo did work with them so they can subsidize the cost for the 32 gig cartridges, because those are very expensive. And, you know, honestly, it's a different discussion for a different day, but I think Nintendo should work with third parties as far as that's concerned. But if this is any indication that all you need to do is just work with the Switch and the audience will reward you, we should be seeing a lot more current gen games, especially games that are released earlier in the generation, like Grand Theft Auto 5. That game exists on the PS3. There's no excuse why the story mode couldn't at least be on the game. Is it because the story, the file size of the game? That could be a possibility, but maybe Rockstar should work with Nintendo so they don't have another LA Noire where they have to have the game half on the cartridge, half download. You know what I'm saying? It's feasible, it's possible, and I'm sure with a lot of other work, a lot of other current gen games that aren't enormous in size can show up on the Switch. I'm just saying it's possible. I'm not sitting here and saying that every game can now work on the Switch because The Witcher 3 works like no. I'm a realist at the end of the day. I love the Switch. I stand the Switch, but y'all know this. I'm not going to sit here and damage control saying that just because The Witcher 3 is on the Switch, that means that every game can come to the Switch. You know, because realistically, like, they're just factors in place that just for whatever reason, sometimes a game can't come to the Switch, and we just have to accept that, especially as the time goes on. And if Nintendo doesn't put out a Switch Pro or whatever, like, just come on. You know, I'm happy that some games like Outer Worlds are going to be coming to the Switch. I think that'll be very interesting to see how it runs. It's being ported by the same guys who did Dark Souls and LA Noire, so it should run decently. And I think with the more experience they have under the belt, we'll get a better version. But again, video for another day. So, if you are a fan of The Witcher 3, should you go out there and spend the, yes, $60 to buy The Witcher 3 on the Switch? If you are a person who loved playing The Witcher 3 on the PC, loved it on PlayStation, loved it on Xbox, and you got your fill of it on those systems and you don't care, then no, you shouldn't go out there and run to get The Witcher 3 on the Switch. Why? Because it's the same game you played on those, except portably. That's it. But if you are a person like me who loved playing The Witcher 3 on those systems, you love the Switch and you just want to play it again for another time, but this time take it anywhere, then get it for the Nintendo Switch. If you're a person who's never played the Witcher franchise before and only own Nintendo systems, it should be a no-brainer. Like I know a lot of people hype up Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild is an amazing game in its own right, but play The Witcher 3 if you want to get like a different type of amazing game, like a different gold standard. Like if Breath of the Wild is the gold standard for a lot of people in one way, The Witcher 3 is just gonna like blow your mind from like a narrative perspective. Like seriously is, you know, and everything else that goes into it, it's like, wow, you know, it's like two complementary games that are both on the same system. Witcher 3 and Breath of the Wild. Like what? Jesus Christ. If it wasn't like, I think all the way at the bottom of my list, I would make like a great photo op, but it's all the way at the bottom over here, and I just don't want to take it down because it's like Jenga. Oh no, it's actually not. It is actually not. It's over here at the top. Both of these games on the same damn system. Crazy. It's crazy. Anyways, from me to you for now, my name is NGS signing out, and comment down below your Witcher experiences. If you picked this game up on the Switch, let me know where you're coming from. Are you a diehard Nintendo fan who's never played the series before and you're interested in picking it up for the first time, so you did? Are you a person who's owned the game and beat it on multiple systems, but you want to play it portably? Or if you're a person who's just like me and you're just like, I want to see how well that thing actually runs. And I love the game, so yeah, let's do it. My name is Neo, signing out. Catch you guys later. Peace. Bro, The Witcher 3 on the Switch.